In the meticulously maintained archives of the Galactic Confederation, there exists a special classification for species that defy all known xenological understanding. Before humans, this classification was theoretical. After humans, it became a necessity. The Krell Interstellar Diplomatic Corps had a reputation spanning 7 galactic standard centuries. They were the ultimate negotiators, the masters of first contact, the species that could find common ground between a silicon-based methane breather and a gaseous sentient storm. Their preparation was legendary. Their protocols were immaculate. Their predictive algorithms were so advanced that they could calculate potential diplomatic outcomes with 99.997% accuracy. Humans reduced those algorithms to cosmic confetti. The initial detection came on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, though Tuesday meant nothing to most galactic civilizations. It was precisely the kind of arbitrarily specific temporal designation that would become characteristic of human communication. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Epsilon 9, positioned at the edge of what humans would casually call the Orion Arm, first picked up the anomalous signals. What initially appeared to be random electromagnetic noise gradually resolved into something different. Most first-contact signals followed a predictable pattern: mathematical sequences, prime number progressions, carefully constructed linguistic bridges designed to demonstrate intelligent communication. The human transmission, by contrast, was a cacophony of what could generously be described as information. There were mathematical sequences, yes, but they were interspersed with something called memes, visual communications that seemed to serve no discernible scientific or diplomatic purpose. One particular transmission showed a small furry quadruped falling off a domestic elevation surface, accompanied by what sounded like uncontrolled respiratory expulsions. Commander Vralix of the Krell Diplomatic Exploration Fleet spent 3 standard solar cycles analyzing this transmission. Was it a threat display? A complex allegory about gravitational instability? A ritualistic communication about domestic animal behavioral patterns? It was, as humans would later explain with infuriating casualness, just a funny cat video. The preliminary xenobiological reports about Earth were enough to make even the most seasoned galactic explorers recalibrate their threat assessments. The planet existed in what most species would consider a perpetual state of apocalyptic potential: massive predatory creatures, extreme temperature variations, geological instabilities, atmospheric compositions that oscillated between breathable and toxic, multiple simultaneous ecosystems that seemed designed to eliminate anything attempting to survive, and yet, the dominant species appeared completely unbothered. The landing site was selected with surgical precision, a location called Ohio, a word that sounded more like a respiratory condition than a geographical designation. The diplomatic team consisted of 7 senior Krell officials, each equipped with biomechanical environmental suits capable of withstanding multiple radiation types, atmospheric variations, and potential weaponry. They were dressed for a war. They were met with a barbecue. Karen Hendricks, 42 years old, middle school art teacher, suburban homeowner, and now inadvertent first contact representative, stood on her front lawn wearing what her civilization called yoga pants and a t-shirt with an inexplicable image of a cartoon cat wearing sunglasses. The Krell translation matrix worked overtime. "Hi," she said, as if extraterrestrial landings were about as remarkable as a pizza delivery. Commander Vralix's primary communication tentacle twitched. The word "hi" did not exist in any of the 372 known galactic languages. It was simultaneously a greeting, a potential challenge, and a complete linguistic nonsense. His secondary neural cluster began compiling potential threat assessments: potential weapon, large ceramic container, containing hot liquid likely caffeine; potential defensive mechanism, casual, indifference; potential communication strategy, complete disregard for established first contact protocols. "We come in peace," Vralix intoned, activating the universal translation matrix. Karen took a leisurely sip of her coffee, looked at 7 heavily armored extraterrestrial beings standing on her carefully maintained St. Augustine grass, and said, "Cool, want a muffin?" This was not in any first contact scenario ever simulated. The Krell had encountered 17 sentient species before humans. Each encounter followed a predictable pattern of cautious communication, careful cultural exchange, and methodical integration. Humans would prove to be the statistical anomaly that would require complete reconstruction of all existing first contact protocols. What the Krell didn't yet understand was that humans were a species that simultaneously existed in multiple quantum states of existence. They were unarmed civilians and potential extinction-level threats. They were creators of breathtaking scientific achievements and producers of videos about animals doing mathematically improbable things. They were, in a word, complicated, and Commander Vrolix had a feeling their muffins were going to be remarkable. Jack Raridan was not, by any conventional galactic standard, an extraordinary human. At 32 years old, he represented the quintessential specimen of early 21st century urban professional humanity, standing at 6 feet 1 inch, with the kind of unremarkable brown hair that could blend into any crowd, and the slightly perpetual look of someone who had consumed approximately 37% of their body weight in coffee. Jack worked as a software engineer in Chicago. His daily routine was a masterclass in mundane human existence. Wake up at 6:47 a.m. not 6:45, not 6:50, but precisely 6:47, a time frame that would fascinate xenosociologists for decades. Consume precisely 473 milliliters of coffee, a beverage that would later be classified by the Galactic Nutritional Database as mild chemical warfare. Commute to work on public transportation, a process that involved more complex social negotiations than most interstellar treaties. What the galactic observation teams failed to understand was that Jack Rest, and millions like him represented something far more complex than a simple biological entity. Humans were walking contradiction generators, beings who could transition from solving complex mathematical algorithms to arguing about pizza topping preferences in nanoseconds. The Krell observation logs would later note several peculiar human characteristics that defied standard xenological classification: capacity for simultaneous high-level reasoning and completely irrational behavior, ability to convert stress into humor with near-instantaneous processing, biological imperative to consume caffeine at potentially toxic levels, unexplained evolutionary advantage derived from watching short-form digital entertainment. Jack's workplace, a mid-sized software development company called Quantum Edge Technologies, was itself a microcosm of human complexity. The open-plan office looked like a bizarre blend of a creative playground and a high-stakes problem-solving arena. Employees dressed in everything from three-piece suits to graphic t-shirts featuring obscure internet memes, often sitting within 3 meters of each other. On the particular morning that would eventually become a pivotal moment in galactic history, Jack was debugging a particularly challenging piece of machine learning code. To any external observer, he appeared completely absorbed, his fingers moving across the keyboard with the precise rhythm of someone engaging in a complex ritual. What the Krell observation team didn't realize was that debugging code for humans was essentially a form of psychological warfare against inanimate computational systems.
"Come on, you beautiful broken algorithm," Jack muttered, a phrase that would be meticulously translated and subsequently cause 3 separate xenolinguistic conferences to argue for decades about its deeper meaning. His colleague Maria Rodriguez Mendies, a quantum computing specialist with a doctoral degree and a collection of vintage video game controllers, leaned over. "Having a conversation with the code again." "It's not a conversation," Jack responded. "It's aggressive negotiation." This exchange, completely normal to humans, would be studied by alien anthropologists as a prime example of human cognitive dissonance. Humans regularly personified non-sentient systems, treating computers, cars, and household appliances as if they possessed emotional capabilities. The Krell initial reports would specifically highlight humans' remarkable ability to apologize to furniture when accidentally bumping into it, curse at technological devices as if they could comprehend emotional reprimands, develop deep emotional attachments to machines that served no biological imperative. What made humans truly fascinating was their unpredictability. Jack could transition from writing complex algorithmic solutions to making an elaborate coffee order that sounded more like a chemical experiment than a beverage request. "I'll have a triple shot, half-calf, oat milk latte with a pump of sugar-free vanilla, extra hot, but not scalding, with a dash of cinnamon on top," he would tell bewildered baristas, a communication style that would later be studied as a form of linguistic performance art. The global human population existed in a constant state that xenobiologists would describe as controlled chaos. They built massive technological infrastructures while simultaneously producing content about cats wearing costumes. They could calculate complex mathematical models and then spend hours debating whether a hot dog was a sandwich. Jack Raridan, in many ways, was the perfect representative of this species. Intelligent enough to understand complex systems, yet prone to spending 45 minutes watching internet videos about people failing at simple tasks.
capable of solving intricate software challenges, yet also capable of getting into heated arguments about pizza topping preferences. Little did Jack know that on this seemingly ordinary Tuesday, he would become a pivotal figure in humanity's first true galactic interaction, a moment that would redefine how the universe understood the term intelligent species. The Krell were watching, and they had absolutely no idea what they were in for. The day started like any other unremarkable Wednesday in the grand cosmic tapestry of human existence. Little did anyone know that this particular Wednesday would become a pivotal moment in interstellar relations, a day that would be studied, analyzed, and completely misunderstood by xenobiologists for generations to come. Jack Reardon's morning began with the usual ritual of caffeine consumption and mild professional existential crisis. Quantum Edge Technologies was in the middle of a critical project, an advanced machine learning algorithm designed to optimize urban infrastructure. To most humans, this would sound like a mundane piece of technological development. To the Krell observation team, it was about to become something far more significant. The first hint of something unusual came at precisely 10:23 a.m., when Jack's code did something completely unexpected. Machine learning algorithms are supposed to follow predictable patterns. They're mathematical constructs designed to identify patterns, make predictions, and operate within clearly defined parameters. Jack's algorithm decided to do something that would later be described in official galactic reports as categorically impossible. It started solving problems it wasn't designed to solve. The initial test was simple. The algorithm was supposed to optimize traffic flow in mid-sized urban environments. Instead, it began identifying complex systemic inefficiencies that went far beyond traffic management. It started connecting disparate data points, economic indicators, social movement patterns, infrastructure stress points, in ways that no existing computational model had ever achieved. Maria Rodriguez was the first to notice something was different. "Jack," she said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and mild concern, "I think your algorithm just solved 3 urban planning challenges that have been stumping researchers for decades." Jack looked up from his coffee, his 4th cup of the day, a quantity that would be considered mild chemical warfare by most extraterrestrial biochemical standards. "What?" he mumbled. "More caffeine than human at this point." The Krell observation team, positioned in their cloaked monitoring station precisely 372 kilometers above Earth's surface, began to pay very close attention. What humans saw as a routine software development process, the Krell interpreted as something far more complex. Their initial classification of humans as a moderately intelligent technological species was about to undergo a radical revision. The algorithm didn't just solve urban infrastructure problems. It began proposing solutions that integrated multiple complex systems in ways that defied conventional computational logic. It was identifying social, economic, and technological interconnections that most human experts hadn't even considered possible. More critically, it was doing this with what could only be described as a kind of computational creativity that bordered on sentience, but wasn't quite sentience. It was something else entirely. Commander Vralix of the Krell observation team watched the data streams with growing confusion. Humans had a term for this: miners thinking outside the box, which was a linguistic construction that made absolutely no sense in any known galactic language. The box, apparently, was more of a suggestion than a limitation. Jack and Maria continued their work, completely unaware that they were being observed. To them, this was just another day of technological problem solving. To the Krell, this was becoming something much more significant. The algorithm began to do something truly unprecedented. It started proposing solutions that weren't just mathematically elegant, but demonstrated a kind of systemic understanding that suggested something far more profound about human cognitive capabilities. It wasn't just solving problems, it was reimagining entire systems of human interaction. Transportation networks were being redesigned, economic models were being challenged, social infrastructure was being fundamentally reconceptualized, all through a machine learning algorithm that was supposed to be doing something as mundane as optimizing traffic flow. The Krell communication logs would later describe this moment with a phrase that roughly translated to unexpected computational manifestation of species-level cognitive potential. Humans would simply call it Tuesday. Maria's initial report to the project lead was maddeningly casual. "Hey Dave," she said, during a routine video call, "Jack's algorithm just kind of reimagined urban infrastructure. No big deal, no big deal. These 3 words would become legendary in galactic diplomatic circles. The algorithm's output was a comprehensive redesign of urban systems that integrated technological, social, and economic considerations in a way that was simultaneously brilliant and almost accidentally revolutionary. It proposed transportation networks that reduced carbon emissions by 62%, suggested economic models that could potentially eliminate poverty in mid-sized urban environments, and recommended social infrastructure changes that addressed multiple systemic inequalities. All of this from a traffic optimization algorithm. The Krell observation team's threat assessment protocols began to go into overdrive. What they were witnessing wasn't just technological development, it was a demonstration of a cognitive approach that defied all known computational and biological models of intelligence. Humans weren't just solving problems, they were reimagining the entire concept of problem solving. Commander Vralix's primary neural cluster began to generate what could only be described as the extraterrestrial equivalent of a headache. The human capacity for unexpected innovation was becoming less of a curiosity and more of a potential galactic concern. Little did they know, this was just the beginning. Humanity was about to get interesting. The Galactic Confederation had a comprehensive system for categorizing emerging technological civilizations. It was a meticulously crafted classification matrix that had remained largely unchanged for 17,000 standard galactic cycles. The matrix contained precisely 2,647 different potential developmental scenarios for emerging species. Humans didn't just break the matrix, they obliterated it. 3 days after the initial algorithmic incident at Quantum Edge Technologies, the global implications began to manifest in ways that would forever change galactic understanding of human potential. Jack Ryden, completely unaware of his newfound cosmic significance, was doing what most humans do when confronted with a breakthrough meal team. He was trying to explain it over increasingly complex coffee orders. So essentially, he told Maria across their office's communal coffee station, the algorithm doesn't just optimize, it reimagines. The Krell observation team, led by Commander Vralix, had by now assembled what could only be described as the most confused xenological research team in galactic history. Their initial threat assessment had gone from mild curiosity to potential existential concern in less than 72 hours. The algorithm Jack and Maria had developed wasn't just a piece of software. It was a computational prism that revealed something fundamental about human cognitive processing, a method of problem solving that defied every known technological and biological model of intelligence. Dr. Elena Castillo, the project's lead researcher, began presenting their findings to a series of increasingly bewildered governmental and academic committees. Her presentations became legendary, not for their technical complexity, but for their casual deconstruction of seemingly insurmountable systemic challenges.
"We didn't just create an algorithm," she would say, taking a sip of her own coffee, a beverage that the Krell would later classify as a performance-enhancing chemical weapon. "We created a system that understands context, not just data." What humans saw as a routine technological development, the Krell interpreted as a potential threat of cosmic proportions. The algorithm's capabilities began to manifest in increasingly surprising ways. It wasn't just solving urban infrastructure problems. It was identifying complex systemic inefficiencies across multiple domains: economic, social, technological, environmental. A sample of its proposed solutions included redesigning public transportation networks to simultaneously reduce carbon emissions and increase social connectivity, developing economic models that could potentially address wealth inequality without massive systemic disruption, creating educational frameworks that could adapt in real time to individual learning capacities, proposing urban design concepts that integrated technological efficiency with human psychological needs. The Krell threat assessment protocols went into complete neural overload. Commander Vralix's research team compiled a report that would later become a cornerstone of galactic xenological studies. Their primary conclusion was both terrifying and fascinating. Humans were not just a technological species, they were a species that fundamentally reimagined the concept of technological development. Most galactic civilizations develop technology as a tool. Humans seem to develop technology as a form of collective imagination. The global reaction was quintessentially human. While some scientific communities celebrated the breakthrough, others were more concerned with more immediate considerations. "Cool," said Jack's manager during a project review, "but can we monetize this?" The Krell observation team spent 3 full standard cycles trying to understand this statement. Was it a threat, a philosophical inquiry, a ritualistic economic incantation? It was, as humans would explain, just business as usual.
What made humans truly unique wasn't just their technological capability, it was their approach to innovation, a blend of creativity, practicality, and what could only be described as controlled chaos. Jack Riordan continued to work, completely unaware that he was rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological development. He was more concerned with whether the office would order pizza for the next team meeting. The algorithm continued to evolve, learning and adapting with a speed and complexity that defied conventional computational models. It wasn't just processing information, it was understanding context, interpreting nuance, and proposing solutions that integrated multiple complex systems in ways no existing technological framework had ever achieved. Dr. Castillo's team began to realize they had created something more than just a piece of software. They had developed a computational system that approached problem-solving with a distinctly human characteristic, the ability to see beyond immediate constraints, to imagine possibilities that existed between the lines of conventional thinking. The Krell observation logs would later describe this moment with a phrase that roughly translated to unexpected manifestation of species-level cognitive plasticity. Humans would simply call it just doing our job. As the global implications of the algorithm began to manifest, the Krell research team made a critical decision. They needed to understand these humans more comprehensively. Their initial classification of moderately intelligent technological species was becoming increasingly inadequate. Little did they know, humanity was about to get even more interesting. The universe was about to receive a masterclass in unexpected potential. The Galactic Confederation had protocols for everything: first contact scenarios, technological emergence assessments, potential threat evaluations. They had spent 17,000 standard cycles developing a comprehensive system for understanding emerging civilizations. Humans were about to demonstrate that protocols were more of a suggestion than a rule. The escalation began precisely 72 hours after the algorithm's global implications became apparent. The Krell observation team, led by Commander Vrolix, had transitioned from passive monitoring to active concern. Their initial classification of humans as a moderately intelligent technological species was now a cosmic joke. What humans saw as a routine technological development, the Krell interpreted as a potential existential threat. The algorithm Nemesis, now nicknamed Araya, adaptive responsive infrastructural assistant by Jack's team, had begun to demonstrate capabilities that defied every known computational model in the galaxy. It wasn't just solving problems, it was reimagining entire systems of human interaction with a creativity that bordered on something more than mere artificial intelligence. Global response was, predictably, quintessentially human. Some governments saw it as a potential solution to centuries-old challenges. Others immediately began discussing potential military applications. A significant portion of the population was more concerned with whether this would affect their ability to order pizza efficiently. The Krell observation vessel, positioned in high Earth orbit, began to implement increasingly complex monitoring protocols. Their initial passive observation had transformed into something far more urgent. Commander Vrolix's primary neural cluster was experiencing what could only be described as the extraterrestrial equivalent of an existential crisis. The critical moment came during a global demonstration of Araya's capabilities. What was supposed to be a routine technical presentation at an international conference became something far more significant. Dr. Elena Castillo took the stage, accompanied by Jack Riordan and Maria Rodriguez. The presentation hall was packed, a mix of scientific community members, government representatives, and tech industry leaders. Araya isn't just an algorithm, Dr. Castillo began, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. It's a system that understands context in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. The demonstration was breathtaking in its simplicity and complexity. Araya began by presenting solutions to a series of seemingly unrelated global challenges, a comprehensive plan to address climate change that integrated economic, technological, and social considerations, a redesign of global educational systems that could adapt to individual learning capabilities, an economic model that could potentially reduce wealth inequality without massive systemic disruption, a healthcare infrastructure proposal that could improve global access to medical resources. The Krell observation team watched in growing astonishment. Most technological developments occurred incrementally. Humans seemed to approach problem-solving like a creative improvisation, simultaneously analytical and imaginative. Jack Riordan, standing slightly to the side, looked completely unbothered. He was more concerned with whether he could get a decent cup of coffee during the break. The global reaction was instantaneous and quintessentially human. Some saw it as a breakthrough, others saw it as a potential threat. A significant portion of social media was more interested in making memes about the presentation. Commander Vrolix's threat assessment protocols went into complete neural overload. The algorithm wasn't just proposing solutions, it was demonstrating a level of systemic understanding that suggested something far more profound about human cognitive capabilities. It wasn't just processing information, it was interpreting context, understanding nuance, proposing solutions that integrated multiple complex systems in ways that defied conventional computational logic. What humans saw as a routine technological presentation, the Krell interpreted as a potential cosmic paradigm shift. The most terrifying part, from the Krell perspective, was the casual nature of the entire presentation. These humans were proposing solutions to challenges that had stumped multiple galactic civilizations for millennia, and they were doing it with the same energy one might use to discuss weekend plans. "Any questions?" Dr. Castillo asked, as if she had just presented a routine quarterly report. The silence that followed was deafening. The Krell observation logs would later describe this moment with a phrase that roughly translated to unexpected manifestation of species-level cognitive potential that defies all known computational and biological models of intelligence. Humans would simply call it just another Tuesday. Jack Riordan's primary concern remained unchanged. "Does this mean we get extra coffee during the break?" he whispered to Maria. The universe was about to receive a masterclass in unexpected potential. Humanity was just getting started, and the Krell had absolutely no idea what was coming. The aftermath of the Aurea presentation was nothing short of cosmic chaos. Galactic diplomatic channels erupted in what could only be described as controlled pandemonium. The Krell Confederation's most senior xenological experts convened an emergency session that would later be referred to as the Actual Quantum Probability Conference. Commander Vrolix found himself in the unprecedented position of having to explain a species that fundamentally defied every known classification system. The initial Krell report read like a diplomatic fever dream. Species classification, humans threat level, redacted primary characteristics, capable of solving millennium-old galactic challenges while simultaneously producing content about animals doing mathematically improbable things. Demonstrates cognitive flexibility that borders on quantum uncertainty, appears completely unbothered by existential revelations. Primary communication method, caffeine-fueled verbal improvisation. Jack Riordan, entirely unaware of his newfound cosmic significance, was more concerned with whether the office would order lunch. "So," he said to Maria during a post-presentation coffee break, "does this mean we get a bonus?" The global response was equally quintessential. Some governments saw Aurea as a potential solution to centuries-old challenges. Others immediately began discussing potential regulatory frameworks. A significant portion of the population was more interested in creating memes about the presentation. Dr. Elena Castillo became an overnight global phenomenon. Though phenomenon for humans meant trending on social media and getting invited to late-night talk shows, her first television interview was a masterclass in understated brilliance. "We didn't just create an algorithm," she told a bemused talk show host. "We created a system that understands context, not just data." The host, more accustomed to interviewing movie stars, looked slightly overwhelmed. "So, it's like a really smart computer. It's like a really smart everything," Maria interjected from the audience, to thunderous applause. The Krell observation team spent 3 full standard cycles trying to understand this exchange. Was it a technical explanation, a form of ritualistic human communication, a potential threat display? It was, as humans would explain, just casual conversation. The global implications of Aurea began to manifest in increasingly surprising ways. The algorithm didn't just solve problems, it reimagined entire systems of human interaction with a creativity that defied conventional understanding. Proposed solutions included renewable energy systems that could be implemented with minimal economic disruption, educational frameworks that could adapt in real time to individual learning capabilities, urban design concepts that integrated technological efficiency with human psychological needs, economic models that could address wealth inequality without massive systemic transformation. Most galactic civilizations developed technology as a tool. Humans seem to develop technology as a form of collective imagination. Commander Vrolix's final report to the Galactic Confederation was a masterpiece of diplomatic understatement. Human technological development cannot be classified using existing paradigms. Recommendation: observe, learn, and possibly seek professional psychological assistance. The unintended consequence of ARIA was a global shift in human understanding. For the first time, a technological system demonstrated the ability to not just process information, but to truly understand context, to interpret nuance, to propose solutions that integrated multiple complex systems in ways that defied conventional computational logic. Jack Reardon continued to be completely unbothered by his potential role in rewriting human technological understanding. "Cool," he told his manager during a routine performance review, "but can we get better coffee in the office?" The Krell observation team would spend generations trying to understand this statement. Was it a form of negotiation, a philosophical inquiry, a ritualistic economic incantation? It was, as humans would explain, just another day at the office. The epilogue, as recorded in the Galactic Archives, would become legendary. Human species' final classification: unpredictable, brilliant, potentially insane. Absolutely fascinating. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage. Not with a bang, not with a whimper, but with a casual "hey, we solved some stuff. Want coffee?" The universe would never be the same, and somewhere Jack Reardon was probably wondering what was for lunch.